All right, so in this chapter, we're going to be looking at the various aspects of sampling, data, experiments, observational studies, just a whole ton of basically vocabulary and concepts, not a lot of calculations. So included in this, population versus sample, what is a census, differentiating between parameters and statistics, quantitative versus categorical data, discrete versus continuous, frequency tables, although I mainly talk about that in chapter 2, levels of measurement, which is minor topic, types of sampling techniques, sources of bias, observational design, and observational studies and experimental design. So statistics has its own vocabulary, and you really need to understand it and be able to use it. So we're going to start by saying, hey, what are data? And first off, data is plural. Data forms the foundation of statistics. And so you might think about that, for a second. If you want to pause, think about, hey, what's data? But basically, they are numbers or other information, not necessarily numbers, that have some sort of context or meaning. So it's important that your data should be collected in an appropriate way, which we're going to talk about those different sampling techniques later on. If it's not collected in an appropriate way, it's going to be useless. And you should always be asking, what do the data tell me? So we're going to start off talking about populations and samples. So a sample, in which you guys have probably heard that term before, is made up of individuals from a population, maybe people, maybe things, places, nouns basically, right? So what constitutes an individual? Like I just said, people, objects, plants, animals, so on and so forth. So you could think of the individuals as the who, right? Not the band, but the who, from who, what, when, where, why, and how, right? So individuals are the objects, the persons, the things, etc., described by a set of data. Okay, so these are the things that the individuals that have had information collected from them. They're the things, the people that have actually been measured. They're not the people who do the measuring. They're not all the people in the population. They are the people who the data has been collected from. That is the sample, okay? Our population, on the other hand, is not defined in terms of who's been measured, who's had data information collected on them, but in terms of the group you want to learn about. So you might want to learn about all Clayton State students or all college students. It really depends on you, the researcher, your goal, okay? Typically, we don't measure everyone in the population because usually our populations are very large and it's just not feasible. So we take a sample, okay? So here's kind of an idea or a picture of it, right? Population, the whole group of individuals that we're interested in, and we usually can't access directly or assess rather directly. So it might be all humans, all Americans, all working age people in California, all crickets, whatever, right? But you'll notice there that there's kind of a word in there, all, right? Sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it is implied, so you gotta be careful there. Right? Sample, on the other hand, is going to be a subset of the population. It is the set of people, or individuals rather, who have actually been measured. Right? When we say examine here, we mean data collected from. I can't spell. I'm sorry. Okay, so so we will have data for everyone in the sample, but not everyone in the population. How well the sample represents the population depends on the sample design. We want our sample to be representative. We want it to look like a little mini-me of the population. So we want it to look like the population on average. Of course, it's not going to look exactly like the population, but it should have the same or similar average age or ethnicity or any characteristic we want to look at. Okay, so how do we describe these population versus statistics? A parameter is a number that describes a population. And you notice they both have P's, right? P for population, P for parameter. And usually we will not have calculated that. A statistic, on the other hand, has been actually calculated from the sample. Okay, and so we have symbols for those, right? We're usually going to use mu for the mean, which is the mean of the population, and we use x bar for the mean of the sample. So, and these are going to be actual statistic is actually calculated from data. We'll say that, calculated. Okay. So the parameters are not just for means. You might have standard deviation, which is sigma. So that's standard deviation. And over here, if it's calculated from data, we're going to say S. And there's other ones, but these are the main ones we're going to deal with through the semester. So let's pause here and we'll put some examples in a different video.